Hi everyone, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at British Tank Ace in this World War II tactical solitaire game, which is the brother game to American Tank Ace. You take control of a British tank and try to survive campaigns in North Africa, Italy, and Europe. Designed by Gregory Smith, who is also the designer of The Hunters and Silent Victory, the game strings together short missions of 10 to 20 minutes into hours-long campaigns. Let's jump in and take a look. Let's start with an overview of general gameplay. The heart of this game is solitaire, but there are rules included for playing the game cooperatively, where each player will control their own tank, or competitively, where players compete for the higher score. Game length really has two parts to it: an individual tank mission that takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and a campaign, which can take 4 to 5 hours or much longer if you don't die. The map scale and tactical timeframes are abstract, whereas a 3-theater campaign can begin in 1940 and continue until the end of the war in 1945. Unit scale is individual tanks and vehicles. Let's go over the key mechanics in British Tank Ace. The biggest thing to start with is that the game consists of both individual missions and 3 separate campaigns. The campaigns are North Africa, Italy, and Europe, and these can be combined in various ways to enable even more campaign variations. Campaigns, if you survive, can be quite long, as a crew will fight 4 to 8 missions per month. As we'll see when we look in more detail at some of the components, the game has a lot of RPG elements. You take the role of a tank commander and you'll have individual soldiers to fill out your tank crew. There are medals, promotions, war trophies, tank upgrades, and awards to win, experience and prestige to be gained, and skills to develop. There are 22 tanks you can command in the game, and you'll earn tank upgrades as you fight through the war. The fighting consists of 5 different mission types: movement to contact, attack, assault, defense, and then a refit sort of non-mission mission. Tactical tank combat goes into rich detail. There's smoke, hull down status, buttoned up status, ammo types, firepower ratings, penetration, shock, arc of fire, etc. The combat model in the game has a good bit of meat to it. Weather and terrain are also modeled in the game. Lastly, as we'll see when we look at the counters, there is a wide variety of tanks and vehicles in the game. Let's take a look at the rulebook, which weighs in at 32 pages. The core rules, however, end at page 25, followed by a page or so of optional rules, then some design notes and historical information. Now, I read through this rulebook last night, and outside of the combat sections, which have some moderate complexity, a lot of the rules content is more procedural and informational than it is conceptual. As it is, I'm going to weigh in on the complexity at a 3.5 out of 10, and I might be tempted to go down to a 3 as I start to play. Layout-wise, things are clean and well organized, with clear section headers and an ample amount of graphic support. The combat example on page 22 is also greatly appreciated. The solitaire rating for this game is an obvious 10 out of 10, as it's built specifically for the solo gamer experience. Now, scenario-wise, at the tactical level, you've got the 5 basic mission types, but there are endless possible compositions of enemy forces, so you never know what you might be up against. At the campaign level, there are specific campaigns, supporting materials, and counters for each of the 3 theaters in the game. North Africa runs from 1940 to 1943. The Mediterranean theater starts in Italy in 1943 and runs until the end of the war. And then Europe starts with D-Day in June 1944 and ends in April of 1945. You can also combine these campaigns in various ways. Additionally, as we'll see when we look at the operational maps, there are specific campaign events, which as far as I can tell are more regular missions with an historical event tag for flavor than they represent unique missions in and of themselves. Let's take a look at our counters. There are 2.5 double-sided 9/16 inch sheets for all the vehicles and squads and markers in the game. And if we look here at sheet 1, that we can see that a large chunk of it here is for ammo, of which there are nearly a half dozen different types, including special types of armor-piercing ammo. There's smoke and there's high explosive ammo. Now here down are the promotion markers for higher grades. This sheet also contains some of the counters for your own personal tank, of which there are 22 different types again. And on the right side, we can see some markers for crew wounds up here, and then specific crew skills, like Sixth Sense, stamina, gunnery, and weapons maintenance. Now if we look on sheet 2, it starts us in on the German units, and there's so many different types to encounter, from Panzer IIIs to Panzer IVs to Tigers to half-tracks and trucks. We can also see down here different types of infantry. The quality can vary on them, and some anti-tank guns. On the right side, we've got some more of the British tanks, some historical unit designations for flavor, and then some of the various post-victory trophies you can find, things like an Italian flag or an Italian helmet down here. This last half sheet has some more enemy counters. We've got some earlier German tanks up here and Italian tanks, as well as their infantry support. Each vehicle has specific performance values. For example, if we look at this Panzer IV-E, the circled red number represents its attack penetration value. And then the next three numbers are its armor. The first of these is the turret front, the second is the hull front, and then the third is the side armor. Player aids, there are a lot of them, but they aren't as overwhelming as they appear. They can be split up into two general categories. The tank mats are here, and then general player aids are on this side. And let's start with the tanks. So there are 11 tank mats in all, double-sided to represent the 22 different types of tanks that you can command. Thumbing through these, we can get a general sense for the types of tanks in the game. We've got Shermans, a lot of Shermans here, Churchills, I know the Matildas here, Challengers, Crusaders, the Comet is here. So a great variety of British armor that you can control and maintain throughout the game. If we take a closer look at one mat, we can start to get a sense for the level of detail in the game. For this Crusader 3, we've got turret facing over here. The members of the crew go in here, whether it's hull down or an open country. The right side is all about ammo. Now the Crusader here is relatively simple with just armor piercing and high explosive and machine gun ammo, all which from game purposes is considered to be unlimited. And other tanks will have rarer ammo like APC, armor piercing capped, which is in limited supply in a particular tank. We've got firepower ratings up here, armor values, we've got track status, radio status, and various boxes to track the crew status and skills. One thing to note about the game, in each scenario, you are the only tank in action. You're generally considered to be fighting a small subset of a larger battle, and while you're considered to be surrounded by allies, the game only models your tank and the small force that you encounter. So there aren't other tanks that you're commanding that are around you, or there aren't other tanks that are showing up in the battle, other allied tanks that are showing up in the battle around you. In addition to the tank mats, we also have 12 other player aids. Now, again, these aren't as overwhelming as they seem. There are 3 general player aids that are here, and then we have 3 player aids for each of the campaigns. So these 3 light tan ones here are for North Africa, then we have for the Mediterranean campaign in Italy, and then we have for the European command, for the European campaign here. If we take a quick look at some of these, just to kind of model what we're seeing in the game here, the game has war trophies, so after you complete a successful mission, you roll a die and you might get something worth some things that you can then trade in for value that can give you some bonuses in a mission. We have, this is the Armored Fighting Vehicle School, so when you start up a career, you make some die rolls to see if you get some discounts on experience, and then your commander can get a special ability as well before the campaign starts. This is the command summary. So in each combat round, you as the commander are generally going to execute 2 commands. And so these are a list of what these commands are and roughly how they work. So a lot of good supporting materials here. This one is one-sided. Then we have a 2-sided commander status. So this is where you're going to use to track the status of the trophies you've got, the awards, your rank, other elements, your experience and your prestige of your campaign. Now this is an NCO side and then the officer side. The game recommends that you start with the NCO side, and then as your campaign continues, you have the potential to become an officer and continue on that way. And again, just to get a sense of these campaign player aids, again, there are 3 for each one. Let's just take a look very quickly at the one for the North African campaign. So this is the mission assignment chart. Before you go out on a particular mission, you look for the month, and then you're going to roll a 2-sided die to get what type of a mission it is. And then on the back side of this, you're going to roll again, depending upon the months, to find out what the enemy force composition is. So it could be 2 tanks, infantry squads, anti-tank guns, all kinds of different combinations of enemy forces. Then once you get there, you come down here and you roll to see what the particular types of tanks or vehicles you might be encountering in that mission. So again, you're going to get different compositions and then different types of tanks in each mission. So it really seems like the game's going to do a pretty good job of giving you a good variety of mission types and enemy oppositional forces. Then we have a lot of the charts here. I don't want to go into these in great detail, but just by looking at the names, you can kind of get a sense for how combat works. So we've got main gun, anti-tank to hit chart, machine gun, high explosive attack chart, main gun penetration chart. So we start to get a sense for some of these mechanics and how they work. Infantry versus tank, immobilized from movement chart, hull down. We've got a wound chart, terrain chart, fire and bailout chart, and then over here, serious wound resolution, and then the random event chart. We got the weather chart up here for North Africa, and then lastly, skill effects listing and cost chart. These are the skills that you can earn and what they do and how much they cost. And then we have an event chart over here that can occur within missions too. And then there are two more of these sets, one for the Mediterranean theater and one for the European theater, that basically mimic these, except they represent the different terrain and force compositions and events that can happen in the Mediterranean as opposed to in Europe. Lastly, in our player aids, we get these thick wads of log sheets. These are a pretty hefty amount here. There are three different types, one for each of the three theaters that you can fight in. So for example, here is the North African one, and we can see there are 4 missions for each month. So June 1940, July 1940. If we add them all up, because this goes over, it's double-sided, and then it continues on here, and then continues just a little bit into a 4th sheet. So there's 2 sheets of pages for one full campaign. All in all, it adds up to 140 mission slots, which seems like a lot. But if we cross-reference the victory conditions, 31 successful missions is an epic victory. So I get a sense that many of these mission slots will be lost to things like injuries and refits and failures, of course, too. But then at the bottom of the sheet down here, we have the awards that a tank commander can get. So I also think I think completing an entire campaign is probably very difficult. I think it'd be unlikely you will make it all the way through. In a very nice addition, there are 8 sequence of play cards to help with game flow. I love these sorts of additions. They can really help things to keep moving. So we've got one for preparing to play, and then at the bottom it guides you to card 1, which is the mission start. From there you follow the flow of the cards to conduct your mission and campaign. This is a really nice touch. I really think it helps condense the rules into an easy player aid that you can have beside you as you're playing the game. The game doesn't have a set map, but instead there is a battle board and an operations map for each theater. So these are 6 single-sided thick boards in all. Now these are really thick and hefty. If we take a look here at the battle board for the Italian campaign, we can get a sense for how the combat will play out. So your tank is going to start in here at a given range to the enemy, with the enemies present in the location circles around you. Then you generally issue 2 commands per combat round for things like firing or moving, etc. And on the outside here, we have markers for weather and then for terrain. Now, combat obviously gets a lot more detailed than what we're seeing here. Here are some smoke areas as well. There can be a lot of markers being brought into counters, but this gives you a rough idea of how combat is set up and how it works in the game. As we take a look here at the battle board for Europe, let's talk a little bit about overall victory in the game. So each mission will be designated either as a successful mission, did you defeat your enemies and survive, or a failed mission, did your tank get wiped out, did you have to withdraw from the battle, or did you abandon your tank, etc. And then even if you die, you're going to measure up against this victory scale, where 0 to 4 missions is considered a defeat. 0 to 4 missions completed successfully is considered a defeat. 5 to 10 missions completed successfully is a draw. Marginal victory is if you survive and complete between 11 and 20 missions successfully. 21 to 30 is a substantial victory, and if you complete 31 or more missions successfully, you are considered to have achieved a decisive victory. So at your point of death, even, you could still win the game. It just matters how many successful missions that you complete before, for whatever reason, either time runs out or your life runs out, that your particular campaign ends. So there we are. We've looked through everything in British Tank Ace. I'd be very curious to hear what you think. Now, I'll actually be starting a potentially long campaign with this game shortly. So once we're underway, I'll put a link to the next episode right here. Thanks for watching, everybody, and take care.